Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to embark on two-day visit to Russia to attend 16th BRICS Summit. In a major breakthrough, New Delhi and Beijing reach agreement on LAC patrolling. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken to visit West Asia to push for Gaza ceasefire. His 11th trip to the region since October 7, 2023 attack on Israel. With US elections just round the corner, campaigning is on in full swing. From Trump selling French fries in McDonald's to Kamala Harris celebrating birthday on campaign trail. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit Russia to attend the 16th BRICS Summit on October 22-23. The summit, themed Strengthening Multilateralism for Just Global Development and Security, will provide an important platform for leaders to discuss key global issues. The summit will also offer an opportunity to assess the progress of initiatives launched by BRICS and to identify potential areas for future collaborations.
The Prime Minister will be departing for Kazan tomorrow to attend the 16th BRICS Summit at the invitation of President Vladimir Putin. The theme of this edition of the summit is strengthening multilateralism for just global development and security.
India's Ministry of External Affairs said that over the last several weeks, Indian and Chinese negotiations have been in close contact. The two sides have agreed on patrolling arrangements along the line of actual control, leading to disengagement in the Indo-China border areas.
Over the last several weeks, Indian and Chinese diplomatic and military negotiators have been in close contact with each other in a variety of forums. And as a result of these discussions, agreement has been arrived at on patrolling arrangements along the line of actual control in the India-China border areas, leading to disengagement and a resolution of the issues that had arisen in these areas in 2020. And we will be taking the next steps on this.
Answering on India's stance over crisis in West Asia, Ministry said that India has explicitly condemned the acts of terrorism and has called for humanitarian corridors to provide help to those in need.
Insofar as developments over the last 1 year are concerned, we have unreservedly and explicitly condemned acts of terrorism. At the same time, as the conflict has grown and in a sense expanded, we have called for a ceasefire, a release of hostages. There is a particularly serious humanitarian situation which has developed, and we have accordingly called for a humanitarian corridor for access to humanitarian aid and the aid to be able to get to those who are most in need.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will depart for West Asia on Monday as part of ongoing efforts to initiate ceasefire negotiations aimed at ending the Israel-Hamas conflict following the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. This will mark his 11th trip to the region since the beginning of the conflict. His visit comes as Israel continues to ramp up its military operations in Gaza and against Hezbollah in Lebanon. During his discussions with regional leaders, Secretary Blinken plans to stress the urgency of ending the conflict, explore past conflict strategies for the Palestinian territory, and seek diplomatic solutions to tensions with Hezbollah. Israel and Hezbollah exchanged fire over the Israel-Lebanon border on Monday as a U.S. envoy is due to hold talks with Lebanese officials in Beirut on conditions for a ceasefire between the warring parties. Explosions shook northern Israel's sky as Israeli air defense systems intercepted a barrage of Hezbollah rockets fired over the border. The Israeli army said it identified 25 launches from Lebanon into Israel. Israel conducted several strikes in southern Lebanon as seen from across the border in northern Israel. As the Russia-Ukraine conflict continues, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin visited Ukraine on Monday in a show of solidarity with Kyiv, just 2 weeks ahead of U.S. presidential election that is casting uncertainty of the future of Western support. Austin's visit came at a time when Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is urging Western allies to lift restrictions on the use of long-range weapons and calling for an immediate invitation to join NATO. But Ukraine fears the prospect of reduced U.S. military support should Donald Trump be elected to the White House next month. Austin's trip, his fourth and likely final visit as President Joe Biden's Pentagon chief, will include in-depth discussions about U.S. efforts to help Kyiv shore up its defenses as Russian forces gain ground in eastern Ukraine. As Biden's administration winds down, Austin signaled continuity in U.S. support. Meanwhile, Ukraine on Monday claimed that Russia attacked the country's capital Kyiv with several waves of drones for the second night in a row, damaging residential buildings and injuring at least one civilian on Monday. While the Ukrainian military said air defenses downed 59 out of 116 Russian drones launched overnight. The military lost track of 45 drones that likely fell into Ukrainian territory. South Korea on Monday condemned North Korea's illegal involvement in Ukraine, urging an immediate halt. Few days ago, South Korea's spy agency had said that North Korea had shipped 1,500 Special Forces troops to Russia's Far East for training, likely be deployed for combat in the war in Ukraine. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky also had mentioned of Pyongyang preparing to send 10,000 soldiers to Russia, calling for a strong reaction on North Korea's increasing involvement in the war in Ukraine. On the other hand, Kremlin has dismissed South Korea's assertions that North Korea may have sent military personnel to help Russia against Ukraine.
North Korea's involvement in Russia's invasion war is a violation of UN resolutions and should be condemned as an illegal act by the international community. Furthermore, it poses a serious threat to our national security and the safety of our people. We strongly condemn North Korea's action and sternly warn them to halt immediately. Our military will take necessary measures to safeguard the safety of our people.
In Pakistan, the government narrowly passed constitutional amendments on Monday, giving lawmakers more power to appoint top judges who have issued a series of recent decisions favoring opposition chief Imran Khan. Imran Khan had been barred from running and his Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party previously claimed the courts were used to sideline their hugely popular campaign. Under the judicial reforms passed during an early morning session of parliament, Pakistan's Chief Justice will now be selected by a parliamentary committee and have a fixed term of 3 years. The amendments come just days before Supreme Court Chief Justice Qazi Faiz Issa is due to retire. As the US presidential election nears, the campaigning for the polls has heated up. Vice President Kamala Harris celebrated her 60th birthday on the campaign trail, while Donald Trump was seen cooking fries at McDonald's, where he threw a jab at Harris, saying that she never worked there, as her campaign claims. The fight is very close now. Let's see more in Antara Sinha's report.
Go ahead, let's go nice and loud.
Here we go, everybody. With little time remaining, to be precise, just 15 days until Election Day, the US presidential election 2024, the campaigns of candidates, particularly Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris and Republican frontrunner and former US President Donald Trump, are in full swing as they aim to fortify their positions with the electorate. Amidst the strategic aspect of campaigning, a softer outlook was also seen among both the candidates as Vice President Kamala Harris celebrated her 60th birthday and Donald Trump was seen working at McDonald's. US Vice President Kamala Harris said she was truly blessed after superstar Stevie Wonder sang his famous Happy Birthday song on the Democratic presidential candidate's 60th birthday at a campaign event. Harris urged a black congregation in Jonesboro, Georgia, to vote in the final stretch of a knife-edge election battle with Donald Trump.
We have to remind people the power they have in spite of those that would try to diminish and make people feel powerless.
On the other hand, former President and 2024 Republican US presidential candidate Donald Trump went to a McDonald's in suburban Philadelphia on Sunday and tried working French fries station and drive-through window.
Well, that's a good owner. Must be a wealthy guy, huh? Thank you very much. Well, I'm looking for a job, and I've always wanted to work at McDonald's, but I never did. I'm running against somebody that said she did, but it turned out to be a totally phony story. So, if you don't mind, I want to work the French fry counter.
Trump removed his suit jacket, put on a black and yellow apron, and proceeded to cook batches of French fries. The photo op turned into a news conference with journalists outside, yelling questions at Trump through the window.
Now I have worked at McDonald's. I've now worked for 15 minutes more than Kamala. Okay, she never worked here.
Will you accept the results of the election?
Yeah, sure. If it's a fair election, always. I would always accept it if it's got to be a fair election.
The 2024 US presidential elections, which will be the 60th quadrennial elections, is scheduled for November 5th. With early voting underway in swing states in the US and campaigning in its last leg, the contest between the two leaders remains too close. Antara Sinha for DD India.
And in an unprecedented turn of events, Moldova's incumbent president Maia Sandu claimed of external meddling in the twin elections. Moldova witnessed twin polls on Sunday, one for presidential election and other a referendum vote on joining the European Union. The referendum vote witnessed a marginal majority of 50.17%. To this, Kremlin claimed the result as unfair and questionable, with a majority support in favor of President Maia Sandu and European Union. Mozambique's capital saw violent clashes between protesters and police on Monday as people gathered on streets in large numbers demonstrating against the killing of opposition party heads. Protesters claim they need to know the truth about the fairness of election results. Podemos party lawyer Elvino Diaz and party representative Paulo Guambe were killed last week after election disputes, creating a favorable situations for the ruling party Frelimo, also doubted for rigging the election results. The final results of the October 9th election will be declared on 24th of October. All right, let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Newly elected Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto officially sworn in his cabinet on Monday with over 100 ministers and deputies and 48 ministries. Taking over as country's 8th president, Prabowo's cabinet reflects the continuity of his predecessor's main policies. Vietnam's parliament has elected Army General Luong Quang as the new state president. Quang was elected with the vote of all the 440 deputies. He will replace Tu Lam, who was appointed president in May. And King Charles attended bushfire demonstrations and met with firefighters in Canberra on Monday. The British royals are on an official visit to Australia and received ceremonial welcome on arrival. Still to come on this edition of DD India Live. India is powered by another AI, that is aspirational India, says PM Modi at NDTV World Summit 2024 in New Delhi. India is celebrating 8 years of Udan, an initiative that has transformed India's aviation sector. We will show you how Diwali celebrations are on at Times Square.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
You're watching DD India Live. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the NDTV World Summit 2024, the India Century in New Delhi today. Speaking at the summit, the Prime Minister said that India has become a ray of hope in this era of global turmoil. Stressing on the role of AI in today's world, Prime Minister Modi said India has advantage of double AI power. Aspirational India, along with artificial intelligence, which can do wonders for the world.
इसी साल भारत ने इंडिया एआई मिशन शुरू किया है। हेल्थ केयर हो, एजुकेशन हो, स्टार्टअप्स हो, भारत हर सेक्टर में एआई का उपयोग बढ़ा रहा है। हम दुनिया को भी बेहतर एआई सॉल्यूशंस देने में जुटे हैं। क्वाड के स्तर पर भी भारत ने कई सारे इनिशिएटिव लिए हैं। भारत दूसरे एआई यानी एस्पिरेशनल इंडिया को लेकर भी उतना ही गंभीर है।
Sharing his thoughts on the bilateral relations between India and Bhutan at the NDTV World Summit in New Delhi, Bhutan Prime Minister Tshering Tobgay said that India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi can stop the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. He added that Global South has a lot of hope in leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
The Global South looks to India for leadership, trusts in India's leadership. As a matter of fact, if there's anybody, any country that can sort out today's problems, it is India. Economic problems. The world looks to India as a market. Even Russia and Ukraine. If there's any person who can sort it out, I do believe it is Prime Minister Modi. And therefore, India's century. And the main ingredient of your team, I do believe, is leadership across the board, including the diaspora, but especially that of Prime Minister Modi.
The former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, David Cameron, said that a permanent seat in the UN Security Council is India's right, adding that India is a shining example of economic growth, development and stability. Cameron made the statements at NDTV World Summit in Delhi.
First of all, we do need reform of the United Nations Security Council. It should have, and I made this argument, I think, as far back as 2005. When I became leader of the Conservative Party, India was the first country I visited outside Europe. When I became Prime Minister in 2010, India was the first country I visited outside Europe. I like to think that I was an early believer in the Indian century, and it's great to be back here today. And obviously, a permanent seat on the UN Security Council is something that should be India's right in this changed world.
India is celebrating 8 years of Udan, an initiative that has transformed India's aviation sector. Prime Minister Narendra Modi highlighted the achievements made under Udan scheme over the years, noting that around 3 lakh flights have operated under the scheme, carrying 1.5 crore common citizens so far.
उड़ान योजना के तहत करीब 3 लाख फ्लाइट्स उड़ान भर चुकी हैं। इनमें 1.5 करोड़ आम नागरिक सफर कर चुके हैं। आज 600 से अधिक रूट्स उड़ान के तहत और इनमें से ज्यादातर छोटे शहरों को कनेक्ट करते हैं। 2014 में देश में 70 के आसपास एयरपोर्ट थे। आज देश में एयरपोर्ट की संख्या 150 को पार कर गई है। उड़ान योजना ने दिखाया है कि कैसे समाज की एस्पिरेशन विकास को गति देती।
Civil Aviation Minister K. Ram Mohan Raidu announced that Udan scheme will be envisioned for another 10 years.
In the last 8 years, the number of Udan routes that have started are up to 601, and over 1 crore 44 lakh passengers have travelled through Udan routes, and more than 2,40,000 Udan flights have taken off since its inception. So, taking a cue from the success that Udan has achieved over the past 8 years, we are envisioning the Udan scheme for furthermore 10 years. We want to take it forward for 10 years because in the next 5 years we are planning to start 50 more airports or enhance the capacity of the existing airports, and up to 2047, which is the Viksit Bharat plan by our Honorable Prime Minister, we feel that we have the capacity to increase the airports to increase to more than 200.
The German aviation sector is calling for taxes on air travel to be cut. The industry wants flying to remain affordable. And joining us with more on this is DW correspondent Chiponda Shimbelu in Berlin. Hi Chiponda, so how high are the taxes on the aviation industry?
Thanks for having me. Well, right now, one of the main issues that the German aviation industry has is, of course, the 25% hike in taxes that was imposed earlier this year in May. Now, that tax can add up to 70 euros to ticket prices, depending on the distance that needs to be flown. And of course, that is something that makes flying more expensive. That is why we got the call that flying has to remain affordable from the German Aviation Sector Association in a newspaper over the weekend. And it is not the first time that we are hearing that. It is something that Europe's biggest budget airline, Ryanair, has been very vocal about. In fact, 2 weeks ago, the carrier said it was stopping all flights to 3 regional airports in Germany and cutting operations by more than half in Hamburg, Germany's second biggest city, and flights to the German capital, Berlin, have also been cut. Now, the air transport tax was introduced as a climate protection measure because flying is the most polluting form of travel. It accounts for around 2.5% of global greenhouse emissions.
And what about Germany's aviation sector? How is it performing?
Well, the troubles that Boeing has been facing and also the supply chain issues that its rival Airbus is experiencing could weigh on the air travel sector. In fact, the shares of the Lufthansa Group and Air France KLM are trading lower than they were at the beginning of the year. Lufthansa cut its outlook in July and announced cost-cutting measures. And the Dutch flag carrier KLM also did the same. Earlier this month, it said it would either delay or cancel investments it had been planning, and it would also look into selling non-core operations to lower costs. Geopolitical tensions and conflict are, of course, also more likely to hurt airlines. Jet fuel prices make up for around a third of airline expenses, and if oil prices continue to rise amid the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, that could hurt airlines.
All right, Chiponda, thanks for your analysis. We'll leave it there. And the Times Square in New York City glittered with early Diwali celebrations over the weekend as hundreds of Indian community members and Americans came together to celebrate the Festival of Lights. DD India's Shubhendu Ghosh reports.
Celebration of Indian culture in the heart of New York. Times Square celebrates Happy Diwali. The Times Square in New York glittered with early Diwali celebrations last weekend as hundreds of Indian community members and Americans came together to celebrate the Festival of Lights. The event showcased vibrant performances from a variety of cultural groups. A special Diwali fair was also organized at the venue.
Well, it's a nice festival. I think that the energy is super good.
It's very significant. Diwali is the most important celebration for us. We come here every year. It's wonderful to be here.
Even being a non-Indian and being exposed to this, it's it's entertaining. It's wonderful to be amongst the culture and the community and learning something that we're not used to.
I see a lot of brands here. I see a lot of people from everywhere around the world. Everybody is just involved in celebrating Diwali at Times Square, which is quite crazy, right?
Great representation of culture coming together. Be it Indian or, people from Bangladesh as well, people from, South Asia, a lot of countries, and Americans. Everybody's together.
The Diwali celebrations at Times Square saw participation from an array of leaders from New York, including City Mayor Eric Adams, Jennifer Rajkumar from New York State Assembly, Senator Chuck Schumer, and Consul General of India in New York, Binay Pradhan, among others.
Diwali, which used to be considered as an Indian festival, is now being celebrated at the Times Square, not only by the Indian and Indian American, but also by the American mainstream people. This is in a way recognition of the achievement of Indian American community. This is in a way recognition of the India-US relationship, and also the relationship that has become multifaceted.
Since 2013, Diwali at Times Square seeks to promote India's rich culture, art, heritage and diversity. Diwali has also been officially recognized as a school holiday in New York City last year. Around 5 million Indian origin people reside in the US, with persons of Indian origin constituting the third largest Asian ethnic group in the United States.
Diwali at Times Square turned out to be a memorable event. People from different cultures came together to celebrate the Indian Festival of Light. A mini India was created in the heart of New York. With camera person S. Jaishankar, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in New York.
Well, that was a nice celebration of Diwali. That's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.